Good morning. I'm Eve Markham Atkinson, Communications Coordinator for West Virginia Citizen Action Group. I'd like to welcome our friends in the media. We appreciate you showing up for this report release on the massive corporate lobbying against Build Back Better. Build Back Better is popular with voters across the nation, as well as here in West Virginia. And we have an added bonus today at this press event. We are authorized to release new West Virginia polling numbers that show how popular Build Back Better is with our voters, especially when informed that these large corporations and millionaires and billionaires who are actively opposing this plan would now be required to chip in and help pay for it through paying their fair share of taxes. We have two speakers today who will go into the details about the report, and we will be sharing links to the report and the polling data. Our first speaker is Gary Zuckett, Executive Director of West Virginia Citizen Action Group. Hello, Gary.
Thank you, Eve. And thank you, friends in the media and those watching on social media. This new report, Behind the Curtain, how the corporate lobbying is trying to tank the Build Back Better program, shows that corporations are sabotaging democracy to protect the wealth that they've gained under former President Trump and during the pandemic, and continue prioritizing profits over people. By dumping millions of dollars in lobbying, campaign spending, and advertising, these companies are trying to stop elected officials from passing reforms demanded by and meant to benefit everyday people. These corporations are spending a fortune to gut key reforms and investment in the Build Back Better plan. Just 20 corporations or groups representing them have spent more than $201 million lobbying so far this year, including roughly $30 million from the Chamber of Commerce, $18 million from the National Association of Realtors, $15 million from Big Pharma, and then other corporations highlighted in our report include Walmart, Exxon, Amazon, Home Depot, Pfizer, Gilead, Blue Cross Blue Shield, FedEx, and others. And many of these corporations are part of the 55 profitable Fortune 500 companies who paid zero income taxes in 2020. And this is in West Virginia. Footprint, FedEx is one of those, American Electric Power, Nike, and the platform we're on right now, Zoom. As we highlight in our new report, these corporations are making a big push to stop key reforms in the Build Back Better agenda that's now under consideration by Congress. And this agenda includes increasing taxes for corporations and the ultra-rich. So there's no guess why they're opposing it. Lowering drug prices, providing affordable health care, including expanding Medicare, investing in public and affordable housing, and importantly, tackling climate change. But this Build Back Better agenda is popular, and even more popular when citizens are told that millionaires, billionaires, and mega corporations will have to pay a fair share of taxes to help cover the costs. Our next speaker will get into the numbers on this with recent polling by Americans for Tax Fairness. So why is Build Back Better so popular with voters? In the form of taxes, it unrigs the system. The budget plan rolls back many of the outrageous tax giveaways that Trump gave to corporations. It protects small businesses, family farms, and families making less than $400,000 a year, which is a fraction of 1% of West Virginians, and strengthens the IRS's ability to go after tax dodging corporations and the rich. Under healthcare and prescription drugs, it makes them more affordable. Healthcare is obviously a top concern for everyone, and most voters support Medicare for all and a public option in numerous polls. Almost 90% of adults support allowing the government to negotiate for lower drug prices. The reconciliation package would make it possible for Medicare to negotiate drug prices while also expanding Medicare to cover vision, dental, and hearing, which our seniors obviously need, while lowering the age of eligibility, among other reforms. Housing is a critical issue, and most families support doing more at the federal level to make housing more affordable. 89% of the public wants the government to continue the moratorium on evictions during the COVID-19 pandemic. And majorities want enough nonprofit and publicly owned homes built so that everyone has a place to live. The Build Back Better agenda includes this large federal investment in the largest investment in a generation. And last but not least, climate justice. 70% of voters nationwide support shifting to more clean energy, reducing carbon pollution from vehicles and industry, and making homes and buildings more energy efficient. Most voters want the US to get 100 to 100% clean energy in our grid by 2035 to address climate change and the pollution. The legislation under consideration by Senator Manchin's Energy Committee would create a clean energy payment program, establish a national clean energy standard, and establish a number of measures to decarbonize our energy supply and get closer to hitting international targets for carbon emissions to hold off the worst versions of climate change. This is an issue that we can no longer afford to ignore. This report names names and calls out the hundreds of millions that Wall Street and mega corporations are spending to keep our government, tax, and financial system rigged, to keep their bank accounts growing and dodge their obligation to pay back a fair share of their wealth into rebuilding our nation and our state. We can't let them succeed, or we'll miss an opportunity to usher in the biggest, most far-reaching improvement in the lives of everyday citizens since the original New Deal of Franklin Roosevelt. Of course, our senior senator, Joe Manchin, is dead center in this debate and in the negotiations going on as we speak in Washington. We are counting on our Senator Manchin to come through for West Virginia citizens and seal the deal for this generation and generations to come. How about it, Senator? You're sitting at the desk that Robert C. Byrd occupied for generations. I believe he's watching from on high. This is your moment. This will be your legacy. What will it be? And with that, I would like to turn the podium over to my colleague, Ryan Frankenberry, with the West Virginia Working Families Organization, to talk about some of these new polling numbers that have just been released.
Thanks, Gary. My name is Ryan Frankenberry. I'm the state director of the Working Families Party in West Virginia. And I'm excited about this, this new document that's explaining everything about how the corporations are trying to influence our legislation and dodge taxes. What this poll tells us is what the people want. It tells us what's in the budget plan and how we go about making sure that we pay for the Build Back Better plan that is going to support hundreds of thousands of West Virginians. So what do people want? People want corporations and the wealthy to pay their fair share in taxes. And how do we do that? And how do we guarantee that that's what happens? In the budget plan, it rolls back many of the provisions in the Trump administration's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. And it closes loopholes that have allowed the ultra-rich and corporations to avoid paying their fair share. This includes increasing the current 21% domestic corporate tax rate to 26.5%, establishing a 15% minimum tax on all firms with over $2 billion in income, and raising the tax rate on offshore profits to prevent profit shifting to tax havens. The plan also simultaneously prohibits new taxes on small businesses, family farms, and families making less than $400,000 per year, meaning that only 1.8% of all taxpayers would be subject to higher taxes. It would extend the child tax credit expansion in the American Rescue Plan, as well as the American Rescue Plan's increase to the earned income tax credit. So those numbers that Gary's been talking about, really important to hear. In West Virginia, we've got a poll that shows how popular the programs in the Build Back Better are, but also in paying for it. And this is fully paid for, and this is a 10-year program. When we talk about taxing billionaires and corporations, Support dramatically increases in voters and West Virginians for the $3.5 trillion Build Back Better investment plan. It'll make healthcare, childcare, education, and housing more affordable. And like I said, it'll continue those expansions in the child tax credit that are currently benefiting 301,000 West Virginians with an average payment of $431 per eligible family. So this poll was conducted by a global strategy group. It was a telephone survey of 600 registered voters in West Virginia. And initially, the support was virtually even, 48% to 47%. But when voters are asked about the funding options, the support increases significantly, by some cases 2 to 3 to 1, when they're told that it's going to be paid for by policies that raise taxes on the wealthy and corporations. So here's a few things that voters found incredibly popular. 70% of West Virginia's voters support closing the loophole that often allows the wealthy to avoid paying taxes on investment gains for their entire lives. That's 70% to 24. 65% of West Virginia voters support applying a one-time tax on billionaires' untaxed investment gains above $1 billion at the same rate as wages and salaries. That's a net positive of 36% among all voters. 64% of West Virginia voters support applying a 2% tax on individuals' wealth above $50 million each year. 55% of West Virginia voters support raising the corporate tax rate for large corporations from 21% and set it back to its previous 28%. The Build Back Better right now is only at 26.5%, so we could even go further, and we really should. And 69% of West Virginia voters oppose increasing federal borrowing, adding to the national debt to fund the plan. That's directly in line with what this Build Back Better plan is designed to do. It's designed to be paid for the next 10 years, and we know that it's going to be incredibly popular. And what we want to say to Joe Manchin is, you know, the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan that Joe Manchin supported and voted for, and is basically the reason that it passed, has benefited West Virginia families and is incredibly popular still. And what we want to see is, we want to see this Build Back Better plan passed. We want it passed now. And we know that Senator Manchin is going to be able to go across the state and tell people of all the good that it's doing for West Virginia families. These are programs that West Virginia has earned. Our families have earned these benefits. When we talk about investing in long-term care, West Virginians have earned that. When we talk about expanding Medicare coverage, West Virginians have earned that. Child care investments, we're one of the lowest ranked states for child care. Senator Manchin and Senator Capito could deliver for West Virginia in ways that is generational change. Extending the child tax credits, we're seeing an immediate impact on our economy and on our families' lives. It needs to be extended. Paid family and medical leave. The American Rescue Plan encouraged small businesses and private businesses to extend that. This is going to give even more options for paid family and medical leave. Universal pre-K. There's no better way to get to children than to making sure that they have access to quality education early. And then, of course, there's extending the ACA subsidies and clean energy investments. All of these are hugely popular in West Virginia with West Virginia voters. And knowing that they're paid for by making sure that corporations and the wealthy pay their fair share in taxes, this is a no-brainer. This is a no-brainer, and we need Congress to act. We want to see Congress act swiftly, and we want to get this plan enacted so that West Virginians are cared for. With that, I'm going to kick it back to Eve or Gary, and appreciate your attention, and we can get this thing across the line.
Thank you so much, Ryan. In closing, we just want to say thank you all again for covering these important, timely, critical issues that are currently being debated in Washington that have the potential to have massive positive effect on the members of our state. We are now open for questions.
Yeah. So what is this is all very cut and dry things right here. And, I think the goal is right there. But what are things that Senator Manchin's saying that is giving you all pause about his ability to do this? What are the things that he's poking holes in this argument that we shouldn't be doing this? Or is he poking holes at all?
Well, I'll start out, and I'm sure Ryan will have something to say about this too. But we've heard Senator Manchin in the media reports speculating about the cost of this program and about the pay-fors, and we think that the polling and that Ryan just outlined really assuages those concerns, because for number one, this is a program, this is a 10-year program. This isn't all going to hit the books next year. And number two, if it goes through in its present form and requires some of these tax dodging corporations that paid no income tax last year, and the billionaires that are hiding their wealth in various tax dodges to pay their fair share, then it's all good. Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that, honestly, the things that we've discussed here, I don't think that Senator Manchin has necessarily poked holes in these specific things. I think, he's raising concerns, and he's certainly working within his own caucus and within the Senate in general, and has expressed, concerns about the cost. But I think that what's important is that West Virginians need to understand what's at stake, and understand that this is a huge investment in our future. We didn't talk about the fact that this potentially could bring 31,000 new jobs to West Virginia, jobs in healthcare, jobs in childcare, jobs in clean energy, jobs, there's so much that could benefit from this plan. I think that, it's important that Senator Manchin and Senator Capito hear from West Virginians. I think that when, we also understand that both of them, they like to keep their ear to the rail and hear, what West Virginians are thinking. And I think that this poll helps with that. It's consistent with all other polling that I've seen and heard about this plan. I think the fact that the American Rescue Plan itself is still wildly popular in West Virginia speaks to the need for this investment. And I think that, from a legacy standpoint, this is how, we save West Virginia, by investing in the people that are still here and building a state that people want to come to. And so I think that, Joe Manchin agrees with the need for these things. I think that we are getting close to full agreement, and we just want to make sure that people understand how this is going to benefit their lives, and also how it's not going to affect their bottom line negatively.
Yeah. So I guess another question would be, West Virginians, does this polling indicate, or any other polling or research that you all have done, about like this is the time, this is the moment? You say that there hasn't been a lot of spending on the table since the New Deal. I mean, do voters recognize that? And especially when it comes to the pay for, and what how we're going to pay for these big investments. But then, this is all on the table. So, I mean, do voters recognize, have you seen that, that they're in this moment?
That's a real good question. And I'm not quite sure I know the exact answer to that. We're hoping that voters are paying attention. And I know a lot of people are just basically struggling to make ends meet and, keep the bills paid. So in that regard, and that's one of the reasons that we do the outreach at Citizen Action to individual citizens, to educate them and inform them and activate them to communicate with their policymakers and their lawmakers in order to have that type of back and forth communication. I think
I'll add that I think that, I think that for one, too often voters aren't given credit for the ability to see what's going on and have opinions and change opinions. And I think that we've experienced for too many years a degradation of government, an intentional degradation of government, where we've been cutting services, raising taxes. The 2017 Trump tax shift that basically gave millionaires and billionaires a huge tax break really did, it didn't result in everything that they said it would. And I believe Senator Manchin was actually opposed to that tax cut as well. But I think that, when voters and when citizens see positive things from their government, they believe that government can take care of them. We saw it in we saw it in the New Deal. We've seen it, in the American Rescue Plan, when people were struggling through the COVID pandemic. People are struggling, and we're going to be struggling for the next decade. I mean, our economy is not recovering. And, we've seen it in state government, where, you have government that is intentionally pushing down the people. I think that when we see positive things like this, voters overwhelmingly want to see that good. There's still a distrust. And I think that when we pass legislation like this, it builds a trust in the voters. And it's not partisan. These polling numbers are not partisan. We could break them down to Republican, Democrat, non-party. People want good things, and they want to be cared for, and they want to be part of a society that cares for itself. And I think people across all spectrum of the ideology understand that corporations and the rich have been taking advantage of working class people for decades, and they want to see that righted. And I think that this report shows that, the poll shows that, and I think if you talk to anybody on the street, which we often do, you talk about the rich and the corporations paying their taxes, and people are upset. So I think that this has a long range effect on how it'll improve our lives and just improve our state of affairs.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, I just got one last question, just kind of about what happens if we don't, if Senator Manchin doesn't come to the, rise to the moment here and, act on some of this pretty popular legislation. What are the consequences if we don't do this? That's my last question.
Well, this is I think once in a generation chance to make a big leap forward. And if we take a pass on this, who knows when we'll get this chance again. The Democrats are, in the leadership in Washington, but by the slimmest of margins. We have a midterm election coming up next year. If we don't get this passed now, it could be another decade before we get another bite of the apple.
Yeah, I mean, I think if this legislation doesn't pass, people are going to continue to suffer, and in ways that can completely be eradicated and helped. We saw with the child tax credit that child poverty was, lifted up an incredible percent just with that. This is an opportunity to fix things, to provide West Virginia with a future. We have a mono economy still driven by, fossil fuels. This is going to give an opportunity for us to increase our diversify our economy. And if this doesn't pass, we are likely to continue to drift backwards and be 50th in even more things. This is our one chance. It's a once in a generation opportunity, and we hope that both Senators Manchin and Capito take it.
Agreed.
All right, y'all. Hey, I don't have any more questions. So if y'all have anything more to add, I really appreciate y'all coming and doing this for us.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, we appreciate you and all the folks watching on our social media feeds. So I think Eve's going to wrap it up for us here.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you again for coming and for covering these important issues. We hope that you'll jump back on with our next press event and help get the messaging out, because a lot of what we do is outreach. We try to educate the public, as well as those in office, about the issues, so that those who are living in this state are empowered with that knowledge. The polling data tells you that West Virginians support all the elements of the Build Back Better initiative. And when they're educated on it. And so it's our job to get out there and educate the public. So anytime that we have one of these, we greatly appreciate you attending and helping to get the messaging out, because it's all about empowering West Virginians with a bit of knowledge. Thank you so much. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your day.